Hello everyone, I'd like to welcome you to the sixth chapter of what would have happened if Naruto were the reincarnation of Asura. I hope you enjoyed the previous chapter, and if not, I invite you to check out my channel. Without further ado, I'll leave you with the story.
Chapter 16. Shimatsu no Tani. Previously, dropping to one knee, he asked, Uchiha Sayuri, will you marry me? Sayuri was taken aback. Internally, many emotions stirred, conflicting with each other. Eventually, her love for Naruto was overpowered by the desire for vengeance which fueled her drive, making her see what was necessary to be done. No, why would I do that? I hate you for making me weak, and to me, you're just a demon. Sayuri lied, though every word made her guilty and left a bitter taste in her mouth. She hated doing this to Naruto. The blue-eyed boy that she had come to love certainly deserved better than her. Wasting his time on her was pointless, and she desperately hoped to throw him off. The Uzumaki's eyes widened as he stood up slowly and kept the box with the ring. Each word she had said pierced his heart, stabbing it worse than the Chizigan ever could. Tears threatened to fall from his eyes, and they finally did. Kurama growled and spoke. She's lying through her teeth, that bloody Uchiha. See reason, Naruto. Use my negative emotion sensing and you can tell right away. Though Naruto wasn't in the mood to do so, he did it to entertain him. Perhaps a small part of him really hoped that she was lying. And just as the Kitsune had said, he sensed intense guilt and the desire to deceive present in her. There was something else, another emotion there hiding beneath all that, but it was suppressed and he was unable to recognize it with his negative emotions sensing no matter how much he probed. So much for being an empath. You idiot! That feeling is love, Kurama spelt out plainly for his container. Naruto was puzzled at first. Love? Why did she love him? Asura, sensing his confusion, decided to jog his memory. It started when you saved her from the bullies who destroyed the sandcastle the two of you built together many years ago. Remember how she saved you from getting bisected by Zabuza's sword? That wasn't a coincidence. Furthermore, that night when you went out into the forest to train because you were angered by Inari, you fell asleep from exhaustion. Who do you think brought you back into the house, afraid you would catch a cold or even worse, be vulnerable to attack? It was Sayuri. She even kissed your cheek after tucking you in bed. Later, when that girl with the ice Kekii Genkai attacked you, it was Sayuri who took your place. She may have passed it all off as a teammate's duty, but you know that's just a cover. She most certainly is in love with you, Uzumaki Naruto-kun. Horribly, the truth dawned on him. So she had loved him all along? But that left another question unanswered. Sayuri, I know you're lying. I can sense your emotions, remember? Said Naruto. It may seem weird, but I know you like me. Sayuri was stunned. How did he know? She recovered quickly, and upon further thinking, decided that it was time to spill the beans. Sighing, she replied reluctantly, You're right. I do love you. Your never-ending kindness and brightness never ceased to bring a smile to my face, even after my clan's massacre. Then why did you reject me and lie to me just now? Asked Naruto sadly. The Uchiha paused to think for a moment before deciding to come clean completely. She confessed, It's because of my brother. I wished to avenge my clan by killing him and restoring the clan's honor. Because of that, I knew I had to get stronger, and one day, I would leave the village to carry out my duty, and I didn't want to leave you heartbroken. So I actively avoided you in the academy. Noticed how I tried to be your enemy? But then I became your teammate and inevitably we got closer. A part of me fell even deeper in love, and though I tried to pass it off as a teammate's duty to protect you, you still fell for me anyways. My plan to protect you by distancing us two failed, as you can see. Now we're here at an impasse. We both love each other and you want me to come back with you and marry you, but as much as I'd like that, I detest the village's CRA. Naruto frowned. I'm under the CRA because I'm the last Uzumaki. I found a loophole where two clan heads marrying each other can bypass it, which is why I propose to you other than just as an expression of my love. Sayuri thought, that will give me a solid plan to fall back on when I return to the village. And all the more, I should leave it to kill Itachi before they restrict me to my duties as a housewife. Even if the CRA is taken care of, I will still have to proceed and kill my brother. declared Sayuri. Then why not I come with you? Naruto offered. He wasn't really thinking things through. Realistically, that couldn't happen due to his own ties to the village. But right now, he was desperate and would say whatever it took to get her back with him. Sayuri replied almost instantly, "No, that will be too selfish of me. This is already bad enough and I don't want to take even more from you, especially your dream of being Hokage. Besides, I want to do this alone." Naruto pleaded, "You don't understand. My dream of being Hokage is not complete without Yo Dash. If you want me to come back with you, I'm afraid you'll have to either knock me out and drag me back or wait till I'm finished with my business." She cut in. "Revenge will not bring back your fallen clan," replied Naruto. "So as much as I love you, Sayuri, I'm sorry to say I'll have to go with the first option." Sayuri responded, "Then so be it. It's been a while since we went full out on each other." Her right hand went up in front of her chest, her index and middle finger pointing up while her thumb pressed her ring and pinky finger down. Meanwhile, her eyes had transitioned from black to vermilion red in her right eye and regal violet in her left. Naruto recognized and mirrored her gesture, as was the standard protocol for a duel between shinobi. They held the seal of confrontation till a single leaf flew out of its tree, blown by the wind. It drifted down towards the water of the lake, carried by the wind in its strong embrace. Once the leaf hit the water, both shinobi jumped down from their respective statues' heads and sprinted across the lake. They flew at each other and initiated a ferocious high-speed taijutsu match. Sayuri launched a high kick with her left foot, which Naruto blocked. The girl utilized the momentum and flipped, landing on the water. She pushed off and attempted a left hook, but Naruto blocked it once again. This time, the Uzumaki retaliated by swinging his right fist, but the Uchiha ducked under it. Naruto followed it up with a downward punch with his left hand, but Sayuri evaded it by spinning away in an anti-clockwise motion. The moment she spun around, she shot her left elbow towards Naruto. Unsurprisingly, he blocked it with his right forearm. She quickly continued with a fast right punch, but that too was stopped short by the Uzumaki's left arm. Naruto bridged off from that block by leaning forward and pressing his shoulder against her right arm and chest in a temporary lock while he attempted a low punch with his right hand. Sayuri caught his fist with her left and violently pushed upwards, breaking free of his hold and getting a grip on his arm. The Uchiha whirled him around and chopped her hand down. Naruto quickly set his elbow up in another block. Sayuri bent her hand over his and slid down the length of his arm, using her fingertips to manipulate his. In this way, she forced him to form the horse hand seal with her. Naruto looked at it in worry before deciding to thrust his other fist at her. The Uchiha weaved around it and threw her first successful punch at his face, pushing him back. Before he could fall, though, she caught his outstretched right arm with her left and this time forced him to complete the tiger hand seal. Before he could comprehend what just happened, she reaped his left leg out from under him and brought him into a kneel. While still holding his right hand, she shot a kick at his face which he almost managed to block but didn't. It connected and the impact stunned him, allowing her to follow up with a second kick to his abdomen. This caused him to double over, enabling her to plant her feet onto Naruto's back and kick off explosively like a springboard, launching her away from him. While upside down midair, she brought a hand to her lips and expelled a giant fireball. The Uzumaki leapt back and avoided the first one, which crashed into the water and brought up smoke. She then launched 2 consecutive fireballs. Naruto evaded them by bounding backwards in a zigzag manner, before backflipping and landing on the side of the statue. The blonde was about to form the clone seal, but was interrupted by a kunai flying out of nowhere, which pierced the wall right next to his stomach. Attached to its ring was shinobi wire. Like a zip line, Sayuri pulled herself up and rocketed towards Naruto. The blonde took a step back up the wall and they carried on with some more taijutsu. For unknown reasons, Sayuri was particularly fierce in her taijutsu, more so than usual, which put a lot of pressure on Naruto as he had never experienced such a tight battle before. The Uchiha interfered each time he tried to make shadow clones, which was very irritating. The girl spun down low to avoid a sweeping blow before popping up with a feint and then firing off a kick which sent Naruto off the wall in a plunge. While mid-air, the Uzumaki's fingers slid into the shadow clone seal. Smoke burst beside him to reveal shadow clones. When Naruto hit the water, He applied chakra to his feet to repel off, and after grabbing his shadow clones, swung and tossed them up towards Sayuri like rogue missiles. As expected, the Uchiha managed to dodge the first one by sidestepping and kicked the second away. But while her back was turned, a third clone slammed into her. Naruto capitalized on this and quickly jumped up after his clone. Seizing her, both rolled at high speeds up the side of the statue, and once they reached the top at Hashirama's shoulders, the blonde threw her with great strength at the Shodai's neck. She smashed into the wall, landing in an upright position. Sayuri looked up and saw several shadow clones with Razengans in their hands incoming and quickly extracted herself from the crash site. With her Sharingan, she was superior in combat and easily weaved in and out of the clones' attacks and defenses. A Kage Bunshin came at her in a coordinated attack with two other clones. The Uchiha performed a backflip and rolled over the first clone's back, using it like a pommel horse and snapping her feet out sideways to neutralize the other two clones. When she landed, the first clone spun around, but she swiftly dispatched it with a vicious uppercut. At that moment, the original flew at her with an intent to initiate a headbutt, but she formed a cross guard and blocked it. She followed up with a roundhouse kick which threw him away. Her Rinnegan glowed as she stuck out her hands. The original and the remaining clones surrounding her were drawn in by her Bansho Tenin, unable to resist its attractive force. She channeled more chakra to her eyes as she executed a second dojutsu technique, making her right eye warp into a Mangekyo. Enten, Hano Ikazuchi, Blaze Style, Hano Ikazuchi. Sayuri intoned. Black flames manifested around her and shaped into spikes which pierced through the clones. Only the original managed to stop it with a partial manifestation in the form of a six-paths sage chakra arm. Two more manifested from his back and came together in the snake seal before smashing down on the Uchiha, throwing up a lot of smoke. Unsurprisingly, Sayuri escaped from it unscathed. Naruto entered six-paths sage mode and sent a chakra arm at her out of the smoke. With her Sharingan, she foresaw the motion and quickly dodged it. Another chakra arm branched out, forcing her to evade them in midair by leaping from one to another. Naruto sent his left arm in a secondary assault. Sayuri jumped and landed on his chakra arm before springing off it again while forming hand seals. When she entered an upright position, she spewed a giant fireball at the blonde. The Uzumaki withdrew one arm and placed it in front of him, expanding the palm to block the fireball. Naruto dug his heels into the ground as the force of the powerful jutsu pushed him back. All of a sudden, he sensed her chakra appearing behind him. Her left eye is dashed the moment he turned back. She smacked him with a Chidori, sending him rocketing off the statue and into the water. Naruto managed to keep himself afloat, just in time to see Sayuri manifesting her Susanoo. A giant purple bow formed in its hands, and so did an accompanying arrow. She knocked it along with two other projectiles and fired them off at the Uzumaki, whose hands slid into the snake seal. Mokutan, Hobi no Jutsu, with style, with expulsion jutsu. A giant dome-like defensive structure in the shape of a dragon's face burst from the lake floor and surrounded Naruto to protect him from the incoming projectiles. The three arrows collided with the powerful defense mechanism that could withstand a Bijudama, causing a huge explosion which Sayuri used as a cover to channel more chakra to her Susanoo and bring it from a level 3 to that of a perfect Susanoo. With her advanced chakra control, Sayuri managed to stabilize the chakra of her ultimate weapon and complete the technique's pinnacle stage. Her Susanoo was the size of the Hokage rock, matching that of Kurama in terms of height. It possessed massive armor and wings, as well as giant wicked blades larger than Gamabunta's. A gem on its forehead was where Sayuri stood, controlling the entire chakra construct. She jumped off the first statue and flew through the smoke towards Naruto. The Uzumaki had sensed a horrendous spike in chakra and braced himself for whatever incoming technique Sayuri was about to throw at him. He least expected a titanic avatar the size of the Kyuubi. Once Naruto saw it, he clapped his hands together and summoned chakra from Kurama, letting it overflow, wrap around him and converge into an avatar. Sayuri could see that he had channeled the chakra of the Kyuubi and ground to a halt mid-flight. She backpedaled slightly and ripped the warrior's sword of its sheath just as Kurama's chakra form came into view, his 9 tails flailing menacingly. The Uchiha directed Susanu's sword at the Kyuubi, but Naruto swiftly repelled it with a vicious swipe of his tail. The force behind the block propelled the sword out of the avatar's hand and caused it to crash into the nearby forests, taking out many trees in the process. Sayuri cocked her fist back and swung it at Naruto, who countered similarly. Their chakra avatars' fists clashed and caused water to crest around them in waves, inadvertently exchanging memories. Sayuri was exposed to the hatred Naruto had felt as a child when he was severely mistreated by the village, more than when she had first heard of it from the Uzumaki himself. His loneliness, and despite all that, his kindness were also felt by the Uchiha, touching her deeply. His love for her was bared in his memories, which began developing soon after the academy graduation. As they exchanged more blows, more emotions flooded into each other's heads, filling them with a blast from the past. Naruto experienced a sense of loss stronger than anything before, an effect of the Uchiha clan massacre which had scarred Sayuri strongly. He now understood with great clarity why she had been motivated to murder her brother, as well as why she loved him. In her eyes, Naruto's kindness to her was a balancing force against all the chaos and loss she had encountered as a child, a never-ending source of stability for her, a pillar of strength to support her, the very wind beneath her wings. Sayuri continued her barrage relentlessly, and each time, Naruto blocked it. Finally, her Susanoo executed a kick to his stomach and launched him towards shore. She sent a fireball at Kurama, but the fox avatar leapt up and towards her. The Susanoo then fired off a volley of fireballs skyward at Kurama. The manifestation of the Kyuubi dodged the first one, used his tails to slam the second one away and evaded the third one. He swerved and avoided the last one, before flipping and tackling her Susanoo. As the sky stirred with storm clouds, they continued to fight hand to sword. The Uchiha manifested a second blade and wielded both, slashing down at Kurama with a cross slash. The fox avatar brought his tails in front of his face to brace against the impact, deflecting it away to his sides. The power behind the slash was so much that the force rippled across the water quickly and slammed into the forests at shore. "What's the matter? Are you only going to play defense?" Sayuri taunted. Naruto scowled and pushed his hands out, telekinetically commanding the 9 tails of Kurama to push out with great strength and repel the Uchiha's perfect Susanoo off it. The purple titan flew back, but didn't have the chance to get far as the Uzumaki used his avatar's tails to seize it by the leg and pull it down, dragging the Susanoo into the water. Simultaneously, a purple ball formed rapidly at Kurama's mouth. The Bijudama hovered threateningly, primed at Sayuri's Susanoo but did not fire off. The Uchiha clicked her tongue in annoyance. Naruto would not win as he did not have the intent to kill her, but she didn't either. Neither wished to kill off the other, but both wanted to knock the other out. While it was easy to kill someone, knocking someone unconscious without killing him was a delicate job and had to be done very carefully. Her left hand crackled with electricity for the 3rd time that day, invoking thunder to gather and fly down towards the Kyuubi. Her left eye amassed chakra too in order to initiate Ameno Tajikara. The celestial beast crashed down on the Titan in a flash of bright light, disorientating Naruto as Sayuri and her Susanoo shifted away. The impact created a shockwave which spread out and gradually ebbed. Naruto turned back and saw Sayuri amassing a great amount of chakra, which caused her perfect Susanoo's armor to split open slightly, exposing the lightning-colored humanoid within. While the body of her Susanoo had been solid before, now it seemed completely solid if not for the fact that Sayuri was encased in the jewel on its forehead. "That isn't ordinary chakra," uttered Asura. Naruto nodded. "I can tell. It's Indra's chakra, isn't it?" In response, the fox avatar formed the shadow clone hand seal. 4 clones burst into existence next to him. Wordlessly, Sayuri began her onslaught. She appeared above the original and slammed a rod fashioned out of pure lightning down on him, sending him crashing into the forests. The shadow clones began to fight back, but each time, Sayuri's Susanoo proved superior in strength. 2 shadow clones grabbed her avatar by its hands in an attempt to restrain it, and a 3rd grabbed its back. The 4th spun around and smashed its 9 tails at the purple titan's face, following up with a direct punch. However, the clone's hand exploded when the recoil hit. Sayuri mustered some strength and with little effort, smashed the 2 Kyuubis restraining her Susanoo's arms together. She backflipped and broke free from the grip of the one restraining her avatar's back, before taking him out with a downward kick. She sped forward to the fourth shadow clone and plowed her Susanu's foot into his stomach. The clone was knocked out of the air and hit the forests. The original and two other clones continued with their attack. The two clones tried to strike Sayuri's Susanu, but she fended them off with the rod of lightning in her hand. The original blitzed her with a high-speed jump, forcing her up and through the clouds along with his two clones. The four combatants burst through the clouds and continued to clash within the stratosphere. The Uchiha deflected the two clones and slammed an armored fist into the original. The resultant force propelled the original back towards his two clones. The three fox avatars began charging up Biju Damas, while Sayuri's rod of lightning arced to become a bow. The bow was knocked with 3 arrows materialized from Indra's chakra, an extension of her will. The foxes released their tailed beast balls just as the Uchiha fired off her arrows. Indra's chakra overcame the Biju Damas and pierced through them, triggering explosions, before heading straight for the 3 Kyuubi avatars. The arrows vaporized their right sides completely and left the gaps undulating with chakra. Naruto scowled at Sayuri. The girl returned the stare and said, "You'll never win this, Naruto-kun. Give up and let me go." Naruto dispelled the shadow clone which had been knocked away by her earlier and had been gathering natural energy ever since. He felt the surge of natural energy in his body rejuvenating him, and with that, he merged his fox avatar with the 2 shadow clones next to him to form a titanic 3-headed, 6-armed fox. Sayuri's eyes widened as she could see the sharp increase in natural energy because it was scarily visible in the sheer amount that Naruto had just gained. In retaliation, she channeled all of Indra's chakra she had left into an arrow of pure lightning, enhancing it with her 6 paths in power which amplified the jutsu's power 1,000-fold. The Uzumaki growled at Sayuri as colossal Raisengans the size of planetoids formed in his avatar's 6 arms, augmented by natural energy and Rakudo Senjutsu chakra. It contained every single drop of chakra Naruto had left in his own reserves, and that was saying a lot. "Give up, Dash. Trying to make me give up?" The blonde roared as he released his twin astral orbs at the girl he loved, just as she fired off her counterattack. Rakudo, Shin Taikyoku Kudama Rasengan, 6 paths, True Supreme Ultimate Massive Rasengan, Indora no Ya, Indra's arrow. The collision resulted in a fiery fulmination to an extent never experienced before. The heat was so strong that it vaporized all the water in the Konoha-sized lake, leaving only a small stream trickling down the valley of the end. It also generated a powerful lightning discharge that destroyed much of the countryside and toppled the heads of the 2 statues, as well as setting fires to the remains of the decimated forest. A dark storm cloud the size of a hurricane stirred ominously overhead, and strong winds blew outwards from the point of collision that breezed through the surrounding lands and could even be felt as far away as Kumogakure. This gained the attention of Kakashi, who was currently on his way to track his missing students. "I hope, for once, I get there on time," the silver-haired Nin thought as he leapt from tree branch to tree branch. From the cloud, 2 figures cloaked in a purple and orange aura respectively plunged down towards the valley. When they hit the respective sides of the stream, only their auras cushioned them from suffering further damage. The ethereal purple cloak faded away as Sayuri got up into a kneel, groaning. She saw the blonde on the opposite side of the stream standing up. "Damn it, he's still conscious," she thought. Her chakra reserves were severely depleted from keeping her Susanoo up, and she only had a small amount left. The Uchiha was sure that her opponent knew it too. "Amaterasu," Sayuri intoned as blood leaked down the left side of her face. Black flames sprouted and flew towards the blonde mercilessly. In defense, Naruto raised his right hand in front of his face and coated it with Kurama's chakra to shield it from the incoming attack. The black flames caught onto the red chakra and began to consume it. The Uzumaki slipped the burning red chakra off like a sleeve and let it fall to his side. He began walking towards Sayuri. "Kyuso, I can't actually win against him like this. I need more cha." Sayuri winced and cupped her face in agony as she failed to mold more chakra. "I used too much earlier. Can't maintain control. At this rate, I can't use my left eye's abilities either." As she said so, the 6 tomos on her Rinnegan faded away. Naruto jumped towards her and performed a mule kick which tossed her backwards. 3 shadow clones formed with some chakra from Kurama and continued the attack with more kicks which pushed her skywards. She finally mustered enough power in her right eye and foresaw the original's punch. She slammed a fist into his face just as he did the same to hers. The blunt force threw him down onto the stone floor, while Sayuri managed to break her fall with a roll. As she did so, she ripped the black hand warmer off her right forearm to reveal a summoning tattoo. Just as Naruto's 3 shadow clones lunged at her, shurikens burst into existence within her hands. She augmented them with Raiton chakra and propelled them at the bunshins. The lightning chakra ran through their body and stunned them momentarily, creating an opening for her to utilize her Chidori. Sayuri charged at them and took out the first 2 with a swipe of her 1,000 birds, and plunged it into the chest of the last shadow clone. The Kage Bunshin grabbed her outstretched left hand and restrained her, preventing her from withdrawing it. The original ran at her and threw a punch that knocked her away as the clone dispelled. She tumbled and came to a stop as Naruto ran at her with a Rasengan. Somehow, he had managed to gather some more chakra. Sayuri grimaced when the Chidori in her fizzled out due to her lack of chakra. The Uzumaki came within a meter from her before collapsing mid-step into a prone position. His Rasengan drove into the floor and created a small crater as it dispersed, expending the last drop of his chakra. The Uchiha took the opening and kicked him with force on the shoulder, enough to flip him over to a supine position. She sat on his stomach and cocked back a fist in a knockout attempt. Sayuri launched a vicious punch aimed at his temple, but Naruto managed to stop it by catching her fist. He seized her by the collar with his other hand and pulled her close to initiate a headbutt which disorientated her temporarily. This allowed him to slip his knees past her legs and bring them up to his body, then fire off a kick at her stomach which threw her off him. Sayuri groaned as she lay flat on the floor. Why wouldn't he just let her go? Naruto was so fatigued that he could hardly stand up normally. Thus, the Uzumaki rolled onto his side and propped up his elbow, pushing off it to assist him in getting up. The Uchiha wasn't faring that well either, as using Indra's arrow, followed by Amaterasu, and then a Chidori was certainly more than enough to empty her reserves and drain her both physically and mentally. She recovered into a half-squat position and glared at the blonde she loved. He just wouldn't stay down. She charged at him and he did the same. When the 2's fists finally connected, they were hardly more than just love taps. Naruto had his knuckles pressed against her forehead while Sayuri's fist was contacting his stomach. They were panting as their fists remained in contact with their respective targets, staring into each other's eyes. Neither wished to give in, but both no longer had the strength to generate enough force to mean anything in this fight. It would degenerate into nothing more than 2 drunkards fighting. Mindscape, Kurama said, "Hang in there, Naruto. I'm amassing chakra for you, and you will soon be able to end reality." Naruto looked down and saw his chakra being siphoned off towards Sayuri where her fist met his abdomen. He slumped forward and his right hand slipped off her head as he was weakened by the absorption of his chakra. Sayuri released her hand and let him slip into a kneel. Sayuri was pleased as she felt some semblance of strength return to her. This is one of the abilities of my Rinnegan. As someone who possesses the eyes of the Uchiha, my victory is inevitable. Naruto looked up at her. Without warning, he slammed an uppercut to her chin and augmented it with some natural energy he gathered on the spot. The strike's element of surprise caught her off guard and sent her crashing 20 meters away. Sayuri got up, angrily whispering, "Over and over, and over, and over, and over, and over and over and over again. Just give up and let me go." The Uchiha's left hand came alive, crackling with visible Raiton chakra. In the center of the gathering was a black orb of flames. Mindscape, as expected. She's used the chakra I infused for you and assimilated it to make it her own. Chidori as well as Kagetsuchi. Sayuri is planning to end this. I'll give you some more chakra, but it'll strain even my reserves. Make it count and don't release your jutsu till the last minute to ensure she doesn't absorb any more chakra from you, Kurama warned. Naruto smiled gently and raised his fist to Kurama. The fox smirked and tapped it with his own. Reality. Sayuri took off and sprinted towards Naruto with the threatening technique in her hand. The Uzumaki dashed at her with an outstretched hand. As he neared the Uchiha, chakra began to materialize and gather in wisps, forming an orb where chakra rotated violently within. Naruto noticed her right hand reaching for her pouch and emerging with a kunai she whipped out. She threw it at the Uzumaki's head, and it missed narrowly. However, Naruto was no fool. Sayuri never missed, and Orochimaru's experience was a testament to that. But how could she use Ameno to Jikara? Her eyes had been overused earlier and her visual prowess had weakened considerably. He remembered seeing the tomos fade from her eyes, unless Naruto looked up and into her eyes, focusing particularly on her left eye. To his horror, just seconds before they clashed, 6 tomos came into existence on her Rinnegan. All along, she had been buying time. He had been played. Sayuri felt the rejuvenating sensation and hesitated for a moment. It was now or never. Stealing her gaze, she activated her Jikuken Dojutsu. Instantaneously, she appeared behind him with trained precision. The Uchiha gripped Naruto's right arm and forced him to turn around. With a momentary arm lock, she managed to immobilize him for a second. The very same second that she drove her jutsu into his elbow joint, tearing through the bone and flesh completely. The severed forearm hit the stone floor uselessly along with the Rasengan that had been forming in it as the connection to the chakra pathway system had been broken. More than just that, the severed part was being incinerated by the Kagetsuchi in her Chidori. Needless to say, Naruto was suffering from severe blood loss at the stump where his right forearm once was. Though his healing factor was helping him, it would take at least a week to grow it back completely. His vision grew foggy and swam with pain. As the Uzumaki fell forward, Sayuri caught him and slowly lowered him while pulling him close into a hug. Tears streamed down her face. "I am sorry, Naruto-kun. Forgive me, but this was the only way to stop you from coming after me. I've done way too much against you, so I do not expect you to love me anymore. But if you still do..." Sayuri rested his head on the stone floor before she reached for the back of her hair and pulled the kumihimo cord securing it, letting it come undone. Her long hair cascaded down her back in its natural beauty. The Uchiha tied the red and black cord around the Uzumaki's left wrist like a wristband and she declared, "This is my promise to you, Naruto-kun. I will come back once I'm done with my brother." The girl leaned over and pressed her lips softly against Naruto's. For the first time since that incident in the classroom, Sayuri shivered slightly at the touch. What had she done? Then she reminded herself. She had chosen this path. All this was her fault, too. Forgiveness should not be expected for someone like her, who deserved none. If she turned back now, she would have done this all for nothing. Hurt the love of her life for no reason at all. The least she could do now was to carry on and finish her task like she intended. It was twisted, but she would have to make his sacrifice meaningful. With much reluctance, she drew back and broke their connection for the last time. His blue eyes stared into hers with sadness, breaking her heart for doing this to him and filling her with longing and the hope of a better future. "Now rest. Whatever you do, remember that I'll always love you, even if the feelings are no longer mutual," Sayuri uttered into his ear before bringing fingers to his eyes and sliding them shut. The Uchiha was as tired as he was, but she had no choice except to carry on. The girl stood up, feeling the weight of the world on her shoulders. She gave her beloved blonde one last look before dashing away over the horizon. Within her subconscious, Indra cackled to himself. His plan to corrupt her had somehow succeeded against all odds despite her love for the blasted Uzumaki. He should have egged her on to kill him completely, but it would have been way too obvious. Now, it was up to him to find a new purpose after Itachi to keep her within the curse of hatred. How he wished there was new material against the leaf for him to manipulate her with. And even Indra did not know that his wish would be granted, and in such great quantity. Naruto's mindscape, Asura encouraged. "Hang in there, Naruto-kun. I'm stabilizing your condition with as much yang chakra as I can muster." Kurama was also putting out chakra around his host, forming a protective cloak which prevented further damage to his vulnerable body. "Thanks, guys." Naruto wasn't in the mood, however. He had just lost a teammate, a friend, and a lover. Why was he so weak? How was he to become Hokage if he couldn't even save Sayuri from falling into darkness? "Sleep, child. Rest, ordered Asura in a calming voice. He could sense his incarnate's troubling thoughts, and it would not do him any good in this state. Reality. Kakashi burst through the forest line with his Ninken, Pakken. He had finally arrived at the Shimatsu no Tani. The copy ninja noticed his student lying within the valley and cursed himself for not reaching sooner. He hoped he wasn't too late. Kakashi leapt off the valley walls and dropped down to the stream where Naruto was lying next to. He wasn't an Iryonin, but he could tell that his student was in a horrible condition. His right forearm was completely missing, and he was surrounded by a cloak of red chakra. The Jonin sweated profusely. "Naruto, can you hear me?" The blonde opened his eyes and smiled weakly. "Hey, Kakashi-sensei." The copy ninja realized that this wasn't the student he once knew. Naruto had become a lot more hollow. For now, he would have to resolve the Uzumaki's physical issues. The best he could do was to bring him to Tsunade for treatment, and hopefully, she would restore him to a proper condition. Kakashi knew he was losing time. Hurriedly, he picked the boy up, disregarding the red cloak which burned his hands. However, it disappeared within seconds as the man mounted the wall and quickly tore back down the path towards the leaf. Kanahagakure Hospital. Tsunade paced around anxiously while anticipating the arrival of Naruto. What had he done? The hospital doors flew open and in came Kakashi with said boy in his arms. "Tsunade-sama, here's Naruto." His severed right forearm was nowhere to be found. The blonde woman frowned but nodded and urgently brought the boy into an emergency ward. When Tsunade assessed his injuries, she could see that despite losing an arm, Naruto's healing factor was already kicking in. An elbow was gradually but visibly growing at the stump. All Tsunade had to do was to give him more blood to replace that which he lost at the valley, as well as fix the severe chakra burns she could sense from an overusage of his coils. The slug princess sighed, tempted to punch Naruto for the trouble he had caused her, but realized that it would make her job even more difficult as she would have to repair the ensuing damage. 2. "Uzumaki Naruto," she muttered, rubbing her temples in frustration. "Already giving me trouble even before I become Hokage." Without further ado, she carried on with the operation. 1 week later, Naruto wriggled his fingers at Tsunade's command. "Good," remarked the Sannin as she ticked a box on her checklist. "You seem ready to be discharged. How do you feel?" asked the medic. "I feel great, Tsunade-bachan. You should know that I'm not one to stick in hospitals for long." Tsunade snorted in reply. "Yeah, your healing factor makes sure of that too. It's rather remarkable at the level of my grandfather or even better. And by the way, that's Hokage-sama to you." She bopped the blonde on his head. As Naruto rubbed his head in pain, he replied, "Oh right, I missed your inauguration." "Sorry, Tsunade-bachan," said Hokage side. "Some things never change," she thought. "Anyways, your arm has been fully healed, but go easy on it for a while. You've also recovered from your chakra burns, and apparently once you were able to start amassing chakra to a suitable level, your healing rate actually accelerated. Really, you should thank your tenants." Naruto noticed the plural form and realized that as Hokage, she had probably been informed of his ancestor. He cast the thought aside and continued, "Thanks, Bachan. I can't wait to leave this place and have a bowl of Ichirakus." Tsunade smirked. "All right, I'll approve your discharge. Report to my office as soon as possible after your lunch though. I need a report on the battle and Jiraiya has something for you as well." Naruto nodded and jumped out of the window. As she watched him leave, Tsunade pondered on what had just happened. It did not go unnoticed that he didn't seem emotionally distressed by the fact that Sayuri had beaten him and left the village. He must have come to terms with it during the past week of recovery, or so it appeared to Tsunade. Inside, his heart was torn into a million pieces and it did not heal as fast as his arm did. He was just good at hiding how much Sayuri had broke his heart, as he didn't want to break down in front of someone as important as Tsunade. Losing his lover to the darkness of his ancestor's brother was nothing but distressing. One did not get over something as emotionally disturbing as this in a week. In fact, it was possible that this would haunt him for a lifetime, or at least till Sayuri came back to him. He was acutely aware of how much he missed her and desperately needed her affection, despite all that she had done to him, as Naruto understood her in a way. It wasn't really her fault either, as Asura said. Indra was the one behind her mindset. corrupting her with the curse of hatred in an effort to stamp out his will of fire. Naruto became even more conscious of the need to end the conflict of beliefs, as he had just witnessed its effects firsthand and did not like it one bit. Hokage's office. Later, Tsunade ordered in an authoritative tone, "Report, December 16th, 1991 XD. Naruto began recounting his fight with Sayuri from what he could recall. Jiraiya winced when his student said that the Uchiha drove her jutsu into his elbow and tore off his right arm. That had to be the ultimate rejection, and Jiraiya had been on the receiving end of a few of those before. Uchiha Sayuri, I've read up on quite a bit about her. I will mark her as a nuke nin and place a tracking order on her," said Tsunade. Naruto's eyes widened and he dropped to his knees. "Please don't, Hokage-sama. I promise, she will come back one day to be married to me, and I don't wish for her to be treated as a criminal," the Uzumaki begged. Tsunade met his pleading gaze for 2 seconds before sighing in defeat. "All right then, I'll close one eye this time. For official purposes, she is to be treated as a shinobi on a mission to kill Itachi." Naruto stood up and bowed. "Thank you," said the blonde appreciately. Tsunade nodded. "And now, I believe Jiraiya has something to say to you." She signaled for the Toad Sage to begin. "I've received intel about the Akatsuki. They plan to begin capturing the tailed beasts in 3 years' time. These 3 years will be sufficient for you to take a long training trip with me and pick up some more skills. Make no mistake, though you managed to fend off Itachi and Kisame, that was only 2 out of 10 of them. And they certainly won't stop training during these 3 years either. So it's crucial that I prepare you for the final confrontation." Naruto accepted the information and asked, "Fine, but when are we leaving?" "Tomorrow," Tsunade answered as she signed the permits of leave for them. "We still have yet to promote you to Chunin and officialize your position as Uzumaki clan head." Naruto rubbed his chin thoughtfully. "But doing both will place me under the Clan Restoration Act, as I have yet to be engaged to Sayuri. How about you just announce my heritage but withhold my promotion? When both Sayuri and I return, you can then promote us safely. I'm sure I'll be engaged to her before I'm 18. Tsunade raised an eyebrow. It was a risky plan, but it was the only way to avoid placing Naruto under the CRA's enactment. The Godame assented. The Uzumaki was actually smarter than most gave him credit for. "All right, kiddo. You have 1 day to do whatever last things you want in this village. Tomorrow morning, I'll see you at 8 at the North Gate." "Jani," the Toad Sage said, then leapt out of the window. Tsunade was amused. Now she knew where Naruto learnt that habit from. "I won't hold you back any longer. Enjoy your last day here," said Tsunade. "Thanks, Tsunade-bachan." The next day, after having 40 bowls of Ichiraka's ramen the previous night, Naruto felt ready to go on his trip and could die in peace if the need arose. He went round his ex-classmates' houses to bid them farewell. Once he was done with all the formalities, Tsunade cleared them at the gate. "See you guys in 3 years, said Tsunade with a smile. "I swear I'll improve so much that you won't even recognize me when I come back," Naruto said. The Godame smirked in response. "I hope so. You'd better take that hat from me when you do. It's been less than a week and the paperwork is already piling higher than the Hokage rock." Naruto grinned. "Good luck with that then, Bachan." Ja-any." As she watched their retreating backs, Tsunade snapped a finger to summon her personal ANBU squad. "Gather the council for a very important meeting." "Hi!" the operatives replied before disappearing to carry out the command of their leader. She smirked, and couldn't wait to see the counselors' faces when they realized that the very person they had been mistreating for so long had been the son of the greatest hero of the Leaf. It would certainly be an interesting meeting. Tsunade put her hat on and strode towards the council chambers, the smile never leaving her face. Chapter 17, Hurricane Chronicles. Previously, Tsunade put her hat on and strode towards the council chambers, the smile never leaving her face. 3 years later, Naruto and Jiraiya strode down the path to the north gate of Konoha. While the older man did not change much in appearance, the younger blonde did due to both puberty and his extensive training. The Uzumaki wore a tattered, collared orange shirt, and a gray undershirt beneath it that extended with a beaked hood. Over the orange shirt, a black flak jacket similar to the style of Kimogakure wrapped around from his torso to his right shoulder. where a red Uzumaki spiral was emblazoned. He also had gray pants and a pair of black shinobi sandals, a belt with the leaf's insignia inscribed on the buckle, and a pair of bracers marked with storage sealing formulas completed the look, not forgetting the most important of his possessions: a black and red braided cord which wrapped around his left hand like a bracelet. The blonde's muscles could be seen visibly rippling beneath his outfit, and his face looked eerily reminiscent of his father now that his face had matured and his hair had grown longer. "I wonder how everyone's doing," wondered Naruto. Jiraiya laughed and slapped him on the back. "Well, you'll know soon enough." The blonde grinned. "Konoha guard post. Isn't that Jiraiya-sama and that kid Naruto?" asked Izumo. Kotetsu took a glance at the approaching figures. "Seems like it. Naruto looks a lot like the fourth now though," Kotetsu remarked. Izumo nodded in agreement. The resemblance was scary. When Naruto and Jiraiya entered the gates, the blonde turned to the guards and smiled. "Hey!" Izumo smirked. "Welcome back home." Naruto winked at him and said, "See you around." As the master and student continued to walk along the main street towards the Hokage's office, Naruto could see that not much had changed in terms of infrastructure. All of a sudden, he heard squeals of "Uzumaki-sama. It's Uzumaki-sama, and Naruto-sama is back." The blonde sweat dropped. The village may not have changed, but its people sure have. He also hated the fact that they acknowledged him just because of his heritage. It's not like he had done anything worthy of respect in their knowledge other than being the firstborn of the fourth. Naruto spoke. "I can't believe that I wanted attention in the past, and now that I have it, I don't want it." Jiraiya shrugged. "It's just one of the things that come with being famous," replied the Toad Sage. Naruto sighed and tugged on his gray hood, pulling it over his head. He bent his knees and pushed off with great force, leaping onto the nearest rooftop. The blonde waved at Jiraiya to follow him. The Toad Sage jumped up after his student and both ran shinobi style across rooftops of the leaf, towards the office of the Slug Princess. Hokage's office. "Come in," said Tsunade as she heard the knocks on her door. She looked up and gasped at the pair that entered. While Jiraiya was undoubtedly the same, the Godame barely recognized the blonde next to him, compared to the brat she knew from 3 years ago. Naruto pushed back his hood and smiled at Tsunade. "It's been a while, Tsunade-bachan." The fifth initiated a bone-crushing hug, but Naruto managed to withstand the strength behind it and even patted her back. "How's life been?" asked Naruto. "Oh, you know, the usual paperwork that never seems to end every single day, and I don't even get breaks on weekends. Shizen doesn't let me have sake while on the job either," Tsunade complained. Her assistant defended. "It's for your own good, Shisho. When you're drunk, you've no idea what sort of irrational decisions you're making." "Oh, shut up. Anyways, enough about me. What the hell happened to you in those 3 years?" Nothing much, really. I've just invented a couple of techniques, mastered on Myoton, Mokuton, Jiten, and the 5 basic elements, and also gained some muscle mass. That's about it, along with some minor dash." "He really means major," Jiraiya cut in. "Improvements to my taijutsu, bokujutsu, and fuinjutsu." Naruto finished. Tsunade was rather impressed. To accomplish so many things in 3 years was quite remarkable. As if reading her mind, Naruto supplied. "We bought quite a lot of time by training in Myobokuzen. Because a week here is a month there, we spend about—" He paused to count on his fingers. 13 years on that mountain. "You forgot the fact that you spammed shadow clones," Jiraiya added. "Oh yeah." Naruto rubbed his chin thoughtfully. "That would be exactly 6,500 years worth of training, considering that I used 499 shadow clones each day," the Uzumaki calculated. "Excuse my language, but what the actual fuck?" Tsunade swore. He was now definitely on a level beyond that of her comprehension. Naruto laughed. "I know it's quite hard to believe, but don't worry, I'm largely still the same person, except for my power level, which according to Asura, goes beyond S rank and exceeds the Shodai's at his prime, which I believe is an exaggeration, but I don't really know. But hey, there's a drawback, you know. 13 years of being on Myobokuzen means 13 years I didn't get to eat at Ichiraku's." Naruto whined. Tsunade snorted. "Heh, glad to see your personality is intact, and so is your love for ramen. I won't stop you then, since it's been 13 years since you last had your favorite food." Go ahead and indulge yourself. I'll hold your sensei back for a more detailed report. Jiraiya groaned as Naruto grinned. Catch you later, Ero-senin. Pulling on the hood, he disappeared in a flash of orange. Tsunade thought, he really is a lot like Hashirama-sama in many ways. Despite the ridiculous amount of power he holds, he's still hilariously comical in speech. Ichiraku Ramen. The Uzumaki pushed the flaps aside and sat down on one of the bar stools. Without looking up from his pot, Tucci asked, "What can I get you?" "One bowl of miso ramen with a slice of chashu, please," requested Naruto. The ramen chef gasped. No one had ordered that dish in 3 years. Could it be? He looked up at the stranger, who pulled his hood back to reveal his handsome face and his wild blonde hair. "Scratch that, make it 40 bowls, Aji-san," Naruto said with a smirk. Ayam cried, "Is that you, Naruto-kun?" The Uzumaki nodded and hugged her over the bar table. "It's good to be back. I haven't had ramen for a very long time," remarked Naruto as he drew back to his seat. Tucci chuckled. "Great to see you back. I've not seen my favorite customer in a long time, and business has been going down ever since you left." 40 bowls of the usual. Coming right up. While he cooked, Naruto made small talk with Ayam. While the girl learnt of his exploits during the past 3 years, without fully understanding it as a civilian, the blonde caught up with all the latest news in the village. After having his fill, Naruto thanked the father and daughter before taking his leave. Next, he visited the hospital to meet Sakura. "So the rumors are true. I heard a few days ago that you were coming back. I didn't expect you to look so different though," admitted the pinkette. "Everyone seems to be so amazed by my new look, but frankly I don't really see how it's that different myself," replied Naruto. "Anyways, I heard that you are a student of Tsunade now?" Sakura nodded. "Yep. I'm also a chunin now. I studied Iryo ninjutsu extensively under her for the past 3 years, and I picked up quite a lot from her when she's somber." Naruto laughed. "I see. Continue to do well. I'm sure you'll eventually develop your forte to be as good as Tsunade-bachan." Sakura was amused at the name he just called the most powerful kunoichi in the world. Just then, a medical assistant called, "Sakura-san, the ER requires your help. There's a patient with 3rd-degree burns." Naruto continued, "Looks like you're needed. I won't disturb you further then. See you later." Sakura replied, "Same." She then spun on her heel and rushed to the emergency room to attend to the patient. The Uzumaki left the hospital and met more of his ex-classmates along the way, before settling back at home. Naruto was surprised that the house was in a better condition than he had expected. He sent some shadow clones to deal with the layers of dust, but other than that, it seemed pretty much the same as when he left it. As his shadow clones ran around the house, the Uzumaki looked out of the window with a wistful glance. "I wonder where you are. Konoha no Raijin, thunder goddess of the leaf." Then his thoughts shifted. Perhaps he could have a good reunion spar with Kakashi-sensei. Nami no Kuni. In a small house of wood built by the town chief, Tazuna, a young lady sat casually drinking coffee while reading the newspaper. A particular article caught her eye. "That civil war in Kiri is still going on?" She read further and an idea came up. Could potentially be a great place to test out her abilities. The lass finished her coffee, then dressed up in a white shirt with red trimmings and black shorts. Over it, she wore a sleeveless black robe emblazoned with a small fan, and secured it with a navy blue sash she wrapped around her waist. She then slipped into black shinobi sandals which came up to her ankle. The girl slid her tsurugi, named Tenpenki-ai, Cataclysm, through her sash and fixed a small pouch to the back of the sash, where an auxiliary wakizashi was secured horizontally through the pouch's cover. Lastly, she tied her hair into a fishtail braid which fell by her right shoulder. Bangs framed her beautiful face, while a long side-swept bang falling across her face covered her left eye completely. Her eyes, the dark color of outer space, bore deep into the souls of all who they chanced upon. It is said that eyes are the windows to the soul. Hers reflected a profound darkness within, immediately visible to those who caught even a glimpse of them. The girl gathered all her possessions, which were rather minimal, and sealed them into a scroll which she placed in the pouch. "Now, I'll just have to get to Mizu no Kuni, land of water. I probably won't come back after this, so. She took one last glance at the house before leaving it. The young lady headed over to the chief's house. Tazuna-san, the black-haired girl greeted. Yes, Tazuna asked, surprised to see the young lady here. I'll be off to Mizu no Kuni, and this time, I'll be leaving permanently. The man nodded in acceptance and with a tinge of sadness. Thanks for your family's hospitality and renting out that nice house to me. I doubt I would have had anywhere to stay otherwise, she said. You're welcome. We're just repaying a debt from years before, and should you ever need a place to stay, remember that you can always come back here, replied Tazuna. Thank you, the young woman responded gratefully. Overhearing the conversation, Inari ran up to the girl. Nei-chan, you'll be gone forever? Asked the child sadly. She smirked and replied, Not forever, but a long time. Be a good boy and listen to your grandfather, all right? Stay safe while I'm gone. You too, Nei-chan, said Inari as he hugged the young lady. She then put him down and ruffled his hair. Jaeni. Lightning enveloped her for a second before she disappeared as quickly as it came. The girl walked through town while on the way to the port of Wave Country. She passed by the local blacksmith's shop, where she had commissioned both her tsurugi and wakizashi. Both were fine blades crafted with amazing detail, and they had certainly been an integral part of her past exploits. Out of the two, the Tenpenki was more well known as she rarely used her wakizashi. The world-renowned blade was forged from an alloy of adamantine and chakra steel, and every person that had tasted the folded metal of the blade had never lived to tell the tale. The last was brought out of her thoughts by Akiba, the master blacksmith, who waved at her from within his dimly lit workbench. She returned the gesture and carried on towards her destination. Then, she walked by the town square, the center of which was occupied by a marble statue of the country's hero. It was cut smoothly, and it was clearly modeled after a Konohinin due to the leaf headband on the statue. The statue also had 3 whiskers on each side of his face, bearing a close resemblance to the actual person. By now, the girl had already seen this statue over 1,000 times, so she was no longer fazed by the level of detail the sculptor had went to portray the hero. Their bridge was also another example of how well-loved this Konohinin was. She continued walking till she reached the huge harbor where many sea vessels in all shapes and sizes were docked. This was the reason the island of Wave Country prospered. Ships came from distant lands to carry out trade at the busy port of Call. There was a distinct bustle in the area where goods were being loaded and unloaded. Captains of ships and their crew came to shore to take a break from their voyages, having a snack or two at the local market before returning on board to resume their journey. Here, she was certain she would find a vessel on the way to Mizu no Kuni. The last scanned the pier and spotted a vessel marked with the 4 distinct sigmoid marks on its hull, identifying the watercraft as that of Kirigakure's. Currently, the Kirikuria was being loaded with crates of supplies, the whole process of which was being monitored by what appeared to be the ship's captain. Now, the issue was to see if it was a loyalists' or rebels' ship. The rebels consisted of people with Kekei Genkai, as that was what the revolt was about. The loyalists certainly wouldn't possess bloodline limits. Fortunately, she was able to distinguish between the two, as shinobi with Kekei Genkai had special chakra coils which were adapted to producing whatever effect that was in their bloodline. One look, and she could tell that the captain was someone who possessed a Kekei Genkai. The young lady walked up the gangplank and towards the captain, a burly man dressed in a blue coat. He noticed her approach out of the corner of his eye, and an annoyed look crossed his face. "Go away, lady. We don't have time to deal with whatever you want," said the man dismissively as he continued to manage the loading of goods by his crew. "I wish to help with your rebellion," she stated calmly. The captain scoffed and looked up. What could a girl dash? His voice faltered and his throat went dry when he scrutinized her more closely and recognized her features. The captain's eyes widened as he realized where he had seen her face before. The infamous black sword, the color of night by her side, with its decorative scabbard and gold trimmings, was unmistakable as well. "Why, you're the young woman nodded. "So, do we have an agreement? Pardon me for my impudence. Forgive me, I did not recognize you earlier. And yes, I do hope you will join us, but that decision ultimately lies with our leader, Terumi Mei. I'll bring you to her as soon as this ship leaves Nami." We really appreciate your offer, and we could seriously use your help. In the meantime, do make yourself at home on board. We have a spare bunk if you don't mind sleeping there," offered the captain. The young lady smirked at his sudden change of attitude upon knowing her identity. Well, being famous did have its perks. The captain showed her to the bunk and said, "The journey will take about 3 days, and we could be attacked by pirates or Yagura's patrols. Thanks for the warning. If that's ever the case, just call me and I'll take care of it," said the lass. The captain bowed gratefully. Once again, "Thank you for your help." Hastily, he exited the bunk. With Naruto, the blonde thrust his foot out towards Kakashi's abdomen faster than he could block. Instantly, the force snapped his ribs and sent him crashing into a tree. "That really hurt," remarked Kakashi as he winced in pain. "Sorry," said Naruto sheepishly. The blonde walked over and placed a hand on his sensei's ribs. Within seconds, the bones mended themselves and any pain was erased. "That healing ability of yours is amazing," the copy ninja praised. It's nothing, really," Naruto replied, rubbing the back of his head in embarrassment. Kakashi shook his head in disbelief. From this short spar, he could tell that his student was way beyond his level, at least in taijutsu. "Now for ninjutsu, katan. Gokaku no jutsu," the copy ninja intoned, spitting out a decent-sized fireball at his student. The blonde disappeared as the flames engulfed him. Instinctively, Kakashi sensed something was wrong and he jumped away. Luckily for him, he narrowly avoided getting punched by the original who burst through the ground. Kakashi frowned. Naruto seemed fond of attacking from the ground, and that made him predictable. The silver-haired nin flashed through some hand seals and shouted, "Futon. Atsugai? Wind style. Pressure damage." The Uzumaki gestured his hand skyward. The ground erupted and from it, a wooden hand emerged. It caught the futon chakra and absorbed it. "That's impressive," thought Kakashi. As if it wasn't enough, a wooden humanoid attached to that hand continued to rise from the ground. "Mokuton, Makujin no Jutsu, with style, with Golem Jutsu," Naruto announced. Suddenly, it ejected the futon chakra that it had gathered in its palm, essentially redirecting the attack at Kakashi. With no choice, the copy ninja slammed his hands together in front of his left eye. The tomo spun and merged before warping into a pinwheel pattern. "Kamui," Kakashi uttered. A distortion in spacetime formed in front of the wind technique, blowing, no pun intended, it into his dimension. The Jonin continued and absorbed the wooden golem after he was done with the futon chakra. By the time he was done, Naruto was long gone. Kakashi was wary as he was vulnerable in this state, having expended much chakra to utilitas a technique that was not of his own heritage. Quickly, he slid his hidorite down to cover his dojutsu. Even in his fatigue, the Jonin knew that he was definitely nearby and kept his guard up. A sharp whistling sound caught his attention. Projectiles came flying at him, and he had no choice but to deflect them with a kunai of his own. As he knocked the shurikens away from him, they dispersed into smoke and became shadow clones. "Henge," thought Kakashi. This was an interesting strategy. Who knew a basic academy jutsu could be used for something like this? They charged at him, but the Jonin was not famous without reason. "Raikiri," he yelled, before attempting to use shape transformation to dispel the clones by an electric discharge. Though it was not as powerful as he wished it would be, the resulting technique yielded the result Kakashi had hoped for and took out all the shadow clones in his vicinity. Now, where was the blonde? His question was answered by 5 black orbs shooting towards him at high speeds. Something told him that deflecting them would be a bad idea. Once again, his instincts saved his life. Kakashi dodged the highly destructive truth-seeking balls, which slammed into a tree trunk instead. Now that Naruto had mastered on Mayatan, their annihilative powers were tremendously amplified, instantly obliterating everything they touched. Everything. Well, except the blonde himself, where it was relatively safe before to get hit by a shakujo formed from it, as what had transpired during their first bell test. Now, Kakashi would be lucky to even live after just touching it. The silver-haired Jonin sighed. The spar would certainly be over soon, and probably not in his favor, too. However, he was still his student's teacher. He shouldn't lose to his disciple, regardless of how powerful he was. Well, he could at least try. Reluctantly, Kakashi drew a kunai and lifted his headband. Back to battle it was. Tsunade, the Godame Kazekage, glanced at the village he held dear to him. The young leader would never forget the lesson he learnt about love from a blonde friend of his. If need be, he would lay down his life for his village, the one that once scorned him for what he held. And tonight, it seemed like exactly the time he would uphold that promise to his whole village. Gaara was gazing at the night sky when a bird flying overhead caught his attention. It wasn't an ordinary bird. It was completely white and was about 10 times bigger than an albatross. This bird wasn't native to Suna, making Gaara narrow his eyes in suspicion. Upon closer inspection, there was a figure cloaked in black riding atop it, which explained why the Kazekage didn't notice him earlier against the background of the dark night. Dotted on that cloak were red clouds. He had heard of this before. The man was most likely a member of the Akatsuki after Shikaku. Gaara infused some chakra and prepared for battle. Suddenly, sand shot forth from the desert towards the airborne intruder, eliciting an evasive response. The Kazekage repeatedly attempted to capture the man with his sand for the next 5 minutes, albeit unsuccessfully. This drew the attention of his shinobi below, who, though couldn't assist in the airborne battle, were providing some level of moral support for their leader. The man was constantly ahead as the bird was rather swift in flight, making him a pain in the neck to catch. Finally, he retaliated by tossing blobs of clay modeled in the likeness of birds. They flew towards Gaara, who used his sand to intercept them. They immediately exploded on contact, leading the Kazekage to deduce that this was Deidara from Iwagakure, a nuke known for his tendencies to blow up villages. It seemed that he did so through a special type of explosive detonating clay. The Suna shinobi below were alarmed by the explosions and quickly began to evacuate the civilians into the town hall. Meanwhile, Gaara resorted to using the sand from his gourd, which moved far faster than sand from the desert as it was heavily loaded with chakra. This caught Deidara off guard because he did not expect the speed to have increased so greatly. It managed to latch onto his left arm. Deidara took the opportunity while his left hand was still trapped inside Gaara's personal sand and mixed his detonating clay into it. The Kazekage closed his fist. Sabaku Soso. The sand encasing Deidara's arm closed in and crushed it completely, detaching it from his main body. The nuke flinched but did not cry out in pain. Quickly, he flew away. Meanwhile, he released more bombs at the Kazekage, who returned his personal sand quickly to his side. It wrapped around Gaara like a ball and shielded him from the explosions. The redhead then opened a hole to see what the blonde was doing. He won't be expecting this, thought Deidara as he grabbed majority of the clay left in his pouch. He molded a doll with a scary face. Deidara flung it between them, but it stopped in the middle of the two combatants. In a burst of smoke, the ghastly creation expanded to epic proportions. Gaara's eyes widened. That bomb was way bigger than any one of those things should be. Literally, Deidara dropped the bomb. It plunged down towards Tsunade instead of the Kazekage, and by the looks of it, the village would soon cease to exist. Sure, Suri, C3. Gaijutsu wa Bakahatsuda. Katsu. Deidara screamed. The titanic clay statue detonated, producing an explosion that brought up a great amount of smoke. All seemed to be doomed. When the haze cleared, a large brown mass of sand could be seen hovering over the village. Gaara had single-handedly delivered Tsunade from utter destruction with his personal sand, but it had taken a lot out of him. Deidara smirked and slid his hand into his pouch, seizing the remaining clay. His nimble fingers pressed and danced quickly across it, transforming it into a bird which he chucked at Gaara. It took off straight for the Kazekage, who was still panting from exhausting that much chakra. However, he managed to will his sand to wrap around him completely and close him off from the world around. The bird bombarded harmlessly against the sand. Deidara was unfazed as he had expected the Kazekage to do so. After all, he had planned long beforehand for this. The detonating clay he had mixed into Gaara's personal sand earlier began to emerge within the sphere the Kazekage had created to protect himself, and at point-blank range, he would be susceptible to damage. Katsu! Deidara shouted. Within the shell of sand, the distinct boom of explosives rang out. For a moment, all was silent. The sand holding up the sphere began to crack, before falling apart completely to reveal Agara still suspended by his own sand, and very much alive. Cracks marred his face, evidence of his sand armor. Now that its integrity had been compromised, the redhead no longer had a functioning defense between him and the blonde. All it would take was one more strike. At the same time, he was also aware the sand that he had used to shield Suna was also his personal sand, meaning that it also had traces of explosive clay within. Gaara would have to shift the entire mass away from the village, or the village would be doomed once again. With great agony, the Godame willed the massive block of sand to shift away from the center of the village to its outskirts. Deidara watched, but did not attack him. This way, the Kazekage would exhaust himself. And he was right. As soon as Gaara let go of the sand and dropped it into the desert outside of Suna, any remaining chakra left was drained from him. Deidara immediately seized the opportunity and flew towards him atop his bird. Before the Sunanin below could assist their leader, the Nuke-nin captured the Kazekage and flew away, earning screams of anguish from the people of Suna. He didn't look back. Eastern Sea, 2 days later, the captain of the ship burst into the bunk. "Ma'am, we're under attack by the patrol." The young lady nodded and quickly grabbed her swords before ascending the stairs to the deck. On the deck, fights between the rebels and the loyalists were already beginning. A patrol boat was roughly 10 meters away from the Kirikuria, tethered to it by ropes. The Kiri Coast Guards, marked by Kiri headbands and an armband emblazoned with their organization's logo, had jumped onto deck to engage the rebels. She scanned the area where clashes were happening. There were 15 Coast Guards and 20 crewmen. Without a word, she took off for the nearest enemy and blitzed him with a punch. He didn't see it coming and was knocked into the water, already unconscious before he even hit the surface. She sensed an attack coming from behind, and so she spun around while drawing her tsurugi from its sheath. The razor-sharp edge of the tenpenkii sliced the soft tissue of his forearm easily, disorientating him with pain and causing him to drop his weapon. The lass finished him off with a fatal blow to his skull. She found her next target just as he found her. The guard pumped water out of his mouth at her, fully expecting the young woman to be blown away. Instead, she seemingly vanished without a trace. Where dash? It was too late, as his torso was torn violently in half by the girl's sword from behind. While her back was turned, another guard took the opportunity to thrust his kunai at her. Before his kunai reached her, he was suddenly thrown overboard by nobody. The remaining guards had already noticed that the main threat was the lass on deck. Quickly, they turned their attention to her. The young lady flicked her tsurugi to get rid of some of the blood on it before returning the blade to its sheath. The guard closest to her raised his sword in an obvious downward swipe. She sighed internally at the poor swordsmanship these days. Before he could even complete the swing, the young woman caught his sword by its hilt with her left hand and halted it. With just a single hand, she twisted his arm till he bent his back in pain. The lass swiftly struck his sword hand with her knee, forcefully disarming him. She followed up with a snap of her foot and plunged it into her opponent's stomach. This sent him crashing into his comrades. The girl moved on to the remaining 10 Coast Guards. One of them steeled his nerves and charged at her. She sidestepped his punch and seized his outstretched arm. Using his own momentum against him, the young woman whirled her opponent upside down and threw him onto the wooden floor with force, shattering some planks. The lass, who was still grabbing the guard's arm, wrenched it anti-clockwise and brought him great agony. She stomped on his face with her foot and knocked him out cold just as the next enemy came flying at her. The girl leapt back and avoided the guard who slammed down on where she just was a moment ago. She drew her wakizashi as he brandished his kunai, before proceeding to engage in a rapid-fire slashing match. She proved superior and sustained no damage at all while she wholly tore his chest to shreds. Finally, she delivered the coup de grace to his jugular, severing his windpipe as well. The other 8 grew wary of the young lady. Meanwhile, the rebels already knew to stay out of the way of their ally. They watched her in awe as she skillfully took down 3 more of them with just hand-to-hand combat alone. Another Kiri Jonin ran towards her and stabbed a knife into her chest. However, she faded away and was replaced by another guard who hacked up blood in copious amounts. What just dash? The remaining guards that had stood in a group were stunned as she appeared suddenly amidst them. With a low sweep, She knocked one of them off their feet and sent him overboard. The girl pushed off the floor and flipped overhead while yanking a kunai from her holster. She landed squarely on the shoulders of a loyalist, stabbing the steel dagger into his neck and ending his life. After his knees buckled and he collapsed to the floor, the young lady ripped the kunai out and redirected it at an incoming guard, who deflected the attack. She kicked the guard with enough force to knock out his teeth, only for him to explode in a shower of water. Mizu Bunshin, the real one, dashed through the water which concealed him till the last moment, where he burst out and struck her in the neck with a kunai. The most unexpected thing happened next. She too dispersed in a burst of water. The jonin was stunned, not realizing that the water that had just made her up wrapped around him until it was too late. Suetun, Suiro no Jutsu, the water from his own Mizu Bunshin earlier rose up from the floor to become a copy of the lass, who now had a hand on the water prison which trapped the man. It was only a matter of time before asphyxiation overwhelmed him. Only 2 guards were left standing now. They shivered despite their experience. That young lady had just took down 13 of their comrades without much trouble, all of whom were jonins. This was suicide. There were 20 rebels on that deck with them, not including the girl that had easily slayed their fellow guards. They would not get out alive if they didn't run now. Quickly, they scrambled onto the edge of the deck and leapt for their patrol boat without a thought for the unconscious friends left on board. TSK, scum. She gripped the ropes that were still tethered to their boat before they could escape. Katan, Ryuka no Jutsu, fire burst from her throat and tore down the rope quickly, shooting across its length. The guards' eyes widened in horror as they saw the approaching threat. Just as they tried to jump from their boat, the flames engulfed their vessel and roasted them alive. The 2 screamed before tumbling into the water which extinguished their burning bodies. One was out cold from the pain, while the other was still miraculously conscious. He barely managed to keep both his teammate and himself afloat. The young woman dragged all the bodies on board, both unconscious and dead, to the side of the deck before dumping them into the water where the 2 guards were. "Take your friends with you," she spat. The guard was surprised at this act of mercy. Finally, realization dawned on him. He knew this girl and had seen her before in the bingo book. In the chaos of battle and the speed at which she fought, he had been unable to recognize her, but now he knew the reason why they were beaten so easily. For someone with power as vast as hers, she had chosen to mostly use taijutsu in that fight, and not any of her other signature techniques, another reason why she wasn't identified earlier. If they had known, they would have retreated at the very beginning, for they stood no chance against her. She had only been toying with them, the 15 jonins of Kirigakure. If she had so chosen, she could have dispatched all of them within a minute or less without harming a single rebel's hair or the Kirikuria itself. Now that she had practically let him go free, he wasn't about to hesitate lest she change her mind. Quickly, he grabbed the teammates that he could and swam away with them in tow. The young lady turned back, only to find every rebel on board staring at her with reverence, awe, and some level of disbelief. "What?" she asked, earning a flinch from every single man on the deck as if they would be her next target. The captain cleared his throat. "Every hand on deck, return to your duties." With some murmurs, the rebels then resumed what they were doing prior to the attack. The captain then walked closer to the girl. "Thank you, ma'am. You were rather impressive back there, and I'm sure you've gained the respect of my men. Is there anything I can do for you before we arrive on shore?" The young lady shook her head. "I am the one who is hitching a ride here. Take it as my rent," she replied with mirth. With nothing more to say, the black-haired lass returned to her bunk. The captain watched her retreating back with a wondering gaze. She was a mysterious person, and a force to be reckoned with at that. The captain was grateful to have someone like this on their side. A trump card to turn the tides of battle in their favor. He could already taste the victory on his tongue, getting rid of the likes of Yagura and his oppression. At the same time, she could be here to gain their trust before betraying them to Yagura. Despite wanting her help, one could never be too careful with someone as powerful as her. He cast those troubling thoughts aside and continued to man the ship. Only time would tell. Kanahagakure, Tsunade Shisho. "I have urgent news from Suna," Shizen cried as she hurried over to her teacher's desk with a scroll. "What is it?" asked the Godame, who took over the scroll and unfurled it. Her eyes scanned quickly across the document. Written in the script she recognized as that of Temari's, as she was the diplomatic liaison between Suna and Konoha and frequently wrote in. Despite receiving no answer from Shizune, the words said enough to express the severity of the situation. Once her eyes finally left the page, Tsunade's face was one of horror. "ANBU!" the Hokage barked. An operative appeared in a blur, kneeling before her desk. "Bring me Hatake Kakashi, Haruno Sakura and Uzumaki Naruto here, as soon as possible," she ordered. The ANBU bowed his head. "Hi!" He disappeared to carry out the Godame's will. Tsunade's brows knitted in worry. She could only imagine Naruto's response when he hears that his friend has been kidnapped. 10 minutes later, the three shinobi finally arrived at her office from their respective locations. The urgency with which they had been summoned led to Kakashi asking the million-dollar question, "What are we here for, Tsunade-sama?" Her face was grave, as she replied, "Gaara, the Kazekage, has been kidnapped by the Akatsuki." "What?" Naruto almost shouted. "Please tell me this is a joke." The Uzumaki stared at Tsunade, who returned the gaze without changing her expression. His fears were confirmed. "It can't be. Who were they?" questioned Naruto. "Deidara of Iwagakure. I don't have the details, but I only know that Gaara was captured during an attack on the village." "So now what do we do?" asked Sakura. "Suna has requested for a search and rescue team from us, so I gathered you three. Though Naruto is a Jinchuriki, I'm confident he can handle the Akatsuki. I'm sure you would like to rescue your friend, right?" The Uzumaki nodded. "Yes, and thank you for giving me this opportunity." To crush the Akatsuki, Naruto thought in anger. "All right then, pack up and make your way to Suna. They'll update you on the details and how to find Gaara," Tsunade stated. "Why can't they do this themselves though?" Sakura queried curiously. "The Akatsuki compose of S-rank nuke-nin that work in pairs. Given that they weren't able to stop Gaara's capture, it's no surprise they wouldn't be able to retrieve him on their own," Kakashi answered. "Not to mention his partner, Akasuna no Sasori," Naruto added. He was starting to feel impatient. Every second they wasted here was every second that Gaara could be killed. "Can we go now? Gaara needs us," Naruto urged. Kakashi nodded, sensing his students' unrest. The blonde saluted before leaving. The other members of Team 7 quickly followed him out the door. As the mahogany door closed, Tsunade released a troubled sigh. "Shizune, get me some sake." Mizu no Kuni. Everyone aboard the Kirikoria disembarked. The captain ushered the young lady to a subterranean hideout where all the rebels were gathered. From her observation, there were roughly only 100 bloodline users left, which definitely wasn't good for troop morale. Despite their innate talents, the loyalist army was far larger in size and outnumbered them 100 to 1. The captain brought the last to his leader, a tall, older woman with auburn hair dressed in blue. She seemed surprised to see the girl, which wasn't unexpected. How often did one get to encounter an S-rank ninja rumored to be more powerful than a Kage? Additionally, the leader was jealous of her beauty. The younger female was more gorgeous than her, and that was saying a lot as the woman was a stunning looker herself. Waving those thoughts aside, she brought the two to a room that served as a makeshift office. The room was dimly lit by flaming torches on the walls because the underground facility was supposed to be secret, and electricity was not a resource that could be afforded, much less tapped into here. The captain introduced, "This is Terumi Mei, leader of the Kiri rebel forces. And Mei-sama, I believe there is no need for introduction." Mei nodded. "I know very well who you are. It's a pleasure to meet a young kunoichi in this world with such power." The last replied customarily, "You think too highly of me, Terumi-san. I'm here to offer my help for your rebellion." The captain reported. "She single-handedly took out the patrol of 15 jonins who attacked us while we were on the way here, though she left one alive to take his friends back with him." Mei raised an eyebrow. "Though I appreciate it, why would you want to help us? Is there anything in it for Konoha?" The girl fought off a scowl. "I do not wish to affiliate myself with the Leaf, despite the moniker I have been given. As for why, it's to test the capacity of my own abilities. 10,000 shinobi should be an interesting fight. The Terumi was bemused by her answer but didn't probe further. She was well aware of the depth of the power Konoha's thunder goddess possessed, and how much it would boost the war effort. In fact, if the tales of her numerous exploits were true, she could possibly take on the enemy alone and still come out on top. All right then, thank you for your offer. We really need your help in this. If you don't mind me asking, why did you leave one Coast Guard alive? Wouldn't he go back and inform Yagura? Who will prepare for your presence? The young lady smirked. That just makes it all the more fun. Nothing better than crushing the enemy when they are convinced that they are ready. May let out an amused laugh. It may have sounded arrogant or overconfident from someone else, but she knew that the kunoichi before her was capable of what she just said. The rebel leader stood up and shook the girl's hand. We look forward to working with you, Uchiha-san. The firelight from the torches danced in Sayuri's noir eyes and illuminated the playful smirk which traced her lips. As do I. Chapter 18. Kakumiai/Revolution. Previously, as do I. That evening, they planned the following morning's attack on Kirigakure. Sayuri would take on the whole loyalist army by herself, while Mei and her subordinates would focus on taking out Yagura. Whichever person finished first would go round to the other and help finish off the enemy. Sayuri stayed up at night to polish her swords in preparation for the upcoming battle. While she was cleaning the Tenpenki-ai, she received a visitor, Chojuro, one of the 7 swordsmen of the mist. He was Mei's right-hand man, but despite his abilities, was a shy individual. Chojuro asked meekly and politely if he could see the Tenpenki-ai. Seeing that he was so fascinated with her sword, Sayuri handed her blade over with an amused expression. The master swordsman studied the tsurugi closely, keeping it at a distance as if he was afraid he would taint it. The Uchiha restrained herself from laughing at his face as his mouth went wider and wider by the second in awe and reverence. The craftsmanship is so exquisite. May I ask who was the swordsmith? Chojuro queried. Sayuri replied, his name is Shinho Akiba, and he is the master blacksmith of Nami no Kuni. The blue-haired man returned the Tenpenki-ai to its owner. Thank you for allowing me the great joy of holding your sword. It is definitely comparable in quality to one of the 7 swords of Kiri, and perhaps I should pay Nami a visit after this is over. Well then, I shan't disturb you further. Sorry for intruding. Sayuri shook her head. No problem there. See you tomorrow. The man left her to resume her sword polishing. The following day would be exciting, and she could hardly wait for it to begin. The Uchiha returned her sword to its sheath. She then unsealed a small black box from her scroll and opened it. Sayuri smiled fondly at the earrings within as they filled her with a sense of nostalgia. They were gifted to her by the person she loved most, so she supposed that it could be treated as a lucky charm for tomorrow. Well, not like she needed any luck, but it was always good to have the feeling that he was by her side. The next morning, the rebels moved out as planned, dropping around to the back of the village to take out Yagura. Meanwhile, Sayuri boldly came by the front to deal with the loyalist army, who, as expected, had come prepared. This was such that they were fighting in lands in front of the village, rather than the village itself. That was also fine with the Uchiha, as Mei didn't want Kiri to be destroyed either. At this point, they were on a great expanse of grassland that ran for miles. Rolling hills dotted the background far in the distance, and the sky was similarly marked with clouds. In both senses of the word, it was really a champagne, both an open, level countryside, as well as a battlefield. On one side stood the loyal men of Yagura, soldiers of the bloody mist and enforcers of oppression. There were 10,000 of them, so it seemed rather ridiculous that they were fearful of the single person standing on the other side of the plain. The girl was anything but afraid. She never felt more alive. Her blood was pumping and her body was ready for action. She only hoped that these Kirinin wouldn't disappoint her and would actually put up a fight. Uchiha Sayuri, we, the shinobi of Kirigakure, hereby issue an ultimatum. Declared who she presumed to be the commander. Surrender now, or we shall use lethal force to end you. The answer they received was a scornful laugh. How about this? I came here to fight you all, so surrendering kind of ruins that. Let's not waste more time and get this started. Sayuri stood there as the sun shone, casting its radiant glow on her face and illuminating her beauty for all to see. Like the environment, the Uchiha's right eye brightened as well, bleeding from pitch black to a deep vermilion. 3 tomos spun hypnotically in a ring around her black pupil and gleamed in the early morning sun. A sudden wind blew across the fields and made her hair sway. One of her bangs flew aside, revealing her left eye, which was way more terrifying than her right. Its regal periwinkle glow, coupled with the concentric rings and its 6 commas, sent out only a single word: power. The Uchiha smirked. Well then, it was time. She took a step forward. Despite their numbers, many soldiers gulped. Then another step, and another. Some began praying to their respective deities, and all were sweating even though the battle had yet to begin. With each foot, she opened the pace before finally breaking into a full sprint. Kirigakure's soldiers finally mustered their courage and exploded into war cries. The shinobi army began to run at her as they roared. The commander cried, "Whatever you do, never look directly into her eyes," saying it was one thing and doing it was another. It was difficult to fight an enemy whose face you couldn't look at. And besides, it wouldn't make much of a difference anyways. Sayuri tore through the enemy ranks like a hot knife through butter, blasting the first 100 or so men aside in a flash of blue. She ground to a halt in the middle and began to engage in taijutsu. Enemies came at her as quickly as she dispatched them. The Uchiha's Sharingan spun rapidly, swiftly deciphering and predicting the Kirinin's movements. She slammed her fist into one and threw him away before ducking down to avoid the swipe of a staff. Once it passed overhead, Sayuri shot her foot out in a kick that took its wielder out. Another one came at her with a sloppy fist which she evaded, then retaliated with a powerful strike that knocked him out. The next one swung his sword at her. The Uchiha dodged it easily as she could read his sword swings. She seized the handle and kicked the man's stomach, making him fly away while borrowing his katana. With his sword still in her hand, she spun around and plunged it into another's chest just as he approached her from behind. Sayuri leapt up and landed in another section of the army 20 meters away. The Uchiha swerved to the side to avoid a sword before jumping up and executing a roundhouse kick that sent the jonin flying away. The next one came at her. She sidestepped and grabbed his hand. With a swing, she tossed the man like a rag doll, flinging him towards another chunin. A Kirinin swiped downwards with his kunai, but she stopped his swing short and took him down with a throw. Sayuri knocked the kunai out of his hand and grabbed it. She stabbed him with it and ducked to avoid another sword swing before pulling it out and slicing the swordsman with it. Sayuri maneuvered away quickly as yet another jonin lunged at her with his kunai. She dodged it and jumped upwards before propelling her foot into his face. She landed and spun around with a punch, taking out another opponent. The Uchiha then drew the Tenpenki-eye and slashed a chunin's chest. She turned around just as a Kirinin attempted a vertical swing from behind. Her sword clashed against his in a parry and knocked it out from his hands. With her free hand, she threw a fist that propelled him away. Sayuri ran forward and cut down another foe. Swiftly, she twisted around and dodged another assault while slashing the attacker. Someone tried to dash by her with a tanto, but she stepped forward and avoided it. Sayuri dug her heel and whirled around quickly, tearing the length of her sword edge across the assailant's back. The next Kirinin tried a full frontal attack, charging at her. Sayuri took a step to the left and evaded his reckless sword thrust. She finished him off by decapitation from behind. The Uchiha then fended off the next enemy with a slash to his side before returning the Tenpenki-eye to its sheath. A jonin threw a kunai attached to an explosive tag at her. She caught it by the handle and ripped off the explosive tag. Sayuri slapped said tag onto the nearest kunoichi, then redirected the kunai back at its owner's neck. She then performed a tornado kick on the kunoichi, launching her at her comrades while she desperately attempted to remove the explosive tag from her person. It was to no avail as it exploded and took out the surrounding Kirinin as well. Meanwhile, the Uchiha continued on her rampage and took out hundreds more in similar fashion, sweeping through the loyalists in minutes. She caught the arm of one jonin and twisted it as another came from behind with a kunai stab. Without looking back, Sayuri wrenched the first jonin's arm backwards, bringing him excruciating pain while simultaneously evading the kunai. She jumped up just as hands burst from the floor and attempted to catch her, a Doton user. While in midair, she shot out both her feet at the two shinobi she was just engaging and knocked them away. Sayuri seized a kunai from her holster and plunged it into the emerging Doton user as she landed, penetrating his windpipe. The Uchiha leapt forward and engaged in a kenjutsu match. The swordsman actually put up a semblance of a fight, compared to his comrades, but alas was overwhelmed by her speed and was taken down as well. She grabbed him by the collar as she saw incoming projectiles. Sayuri raised the body as a meat shield, then set it down and lunged at the next one just as he was about to swing his sword down in a chop. The man made the mistake of looking into her hypnotic eyes, which penetrated his mind with its powerful jinjutsu. Illusionary shackles materialized around the Chunin and paralyzed him, allowing the Uchiha to dispatch him quickly. A Jonin with a special sword charged with lightning came at her next. She ducked the first swipe and weaved around the second. Finally, she smacked it away with just her left hand alone. Her right hand flew to his neck and lifted him off the floor in a chokehold. "Do you want to dance, too?" Suddenly, a current of wind rocketed towards her from one of the shinobi nearby. Sayuri dropped the man after crushing his neck before facing the onslaught. The Uchiha willingly let herself get blasted by it, so the only thing the wind did was to carry her up and away from the army. Once it lost power, the girl backflipped and landed perfect time for a wide-range ninjutsu as she was now facing the entire army rather than being in the midst of it. After all, why would she let herself get hit when she could easily absorb or deflect it? Sayuri's hands formed the horse hand seal. She took a breath as Katan chakra kneaded within her lungs. "Katan, Goka Mekyaku," she intoned, expelling a powerful wave of white-hot flames which surged towards Kirigakure's shinobi. "Her jutsu is enormous!" screamed one of the Kirinin in horror. Hundreds of shinobi lined up shoulder to shoulder and retaliated with a combination jutsu. Suetun, Suijin Hiki, Water Style, Water Wall. They chorused as they pumped out a torrent of Suetun chakra that served as both a counter and a defense. The two techniques collided. For a few tense seconds, both sides continued to pump out chakra in order to overwhelm the other. Inevitably, mist erupted in great volume from the point of collision and spread out over the entire battlefield. Perfect. Sayuri charged at them in an electric blue blur as she flashed through hand seals. Katan, Goenka, Fire Style, Flame Flower. A multitude of fireballs sailed through the air towards the army, and even with Kangchinin, the loyalists were unprepared to defend against such a threat. It rained fire upon the enemy and easily destroyed any attempt at earth-style shelters or water-style counters. Meanwhile, Sayuri was already fighting among the Kirinin, capitalizing on the mist which reduced visibility while it was still there, although most of them could still move around comfortably due to their natural environment. Most shinobi only saw a flash of red, purple, and blue before their head left their shoulders. With terrifying efficiency, the Uchiha decimated the enemy ranks. Suetun, Mizurappa, Water Style, Wild Water Wave. A Kunoichi yelled, shooting a large jet of water at Sayuri. The black-haired beauty struck the floor with her palm. Chikashodo. An array of Fuinjutsu script shot out quickly and summoning smoke erupted from it. The stream of water ricocheted off her giant crab harmlessly. The crustacean dispelled, followed by purple flames which took its place. A giant head rose from the floor and opened its mouth. A long tongue fired out of it and seized the kunoichi, eliciting a scream. The king of hell swung its tongue and released its victim towards Sayuri. As she came flying towards her, the Uchiha raised her hand. Shinra Tensei. An invisible force exploded from her body and pushed away everything in its path, including the airborne kunoichi, who was tossed away. Just as the king of hell sank back into the earth, a jonin with a broadsword roared a war cry before charging at Sayuri and swinging it towards her in a wide arc. Almost immediately, a purple aura encased the Uchiha and materialized into an ethereal skeleton. The jonin and his sword was repelled with such great force that he landed 20 meters away. Flesh manifested around the skeleton, followed by undulating chakra swords at the hands. Sayuri swung the blades in a circular motion across the floor, sweeping and killing hundreds of unprepared shinobi at once. Many resorted to using ninjutsu against her, but it was pointless due to the protective purple envelope which repelled all attacks. With more chakra, Sayuri formed 2 more arms along with 2 more blades. The chakra construct raised its hands, then smashed all four down simultaneously. A powerful shockwave rippled out from it and wrecked everyone in the way. Those closest to the impact died while others got off with injuries. The next wave of shinobi came at her once her Susanoo was deactivated on purpose. She ran at the nearest one and jumped up, applying a flying kick to the face. Sayuri pushed off and flipped onto the shoulders of a genin, forcing him down onto the floor before punching him with enough force to knock him out. A blade was swung at her, but she caught the assailant's hand before it could connect. She inhaled, then shouted, "Kata! Heijingikure no Jutsu, fire style." Hiding in ash jutsu, Sayuri expelled a large cloud of ash which further obscured the view of the Kirinin. While they could work relatively well in the mist, they did not stand a chance in the Uchiha's ash cloud, especially since it burnt their skin upon contact. All those nearest to the ash fell to the ground in pain as they felt a fiery sensation engulf their very beings. The rest were smarter and kept their distance. Not like they could for long. The eye of the six paths glowed while she intoned, "Bansho Tenin." Her right eye then warped into the pattern of an atom model as she activated its flame control ability. Enten. Hano Ikazuchi. The flames of hell erupted from the ground and encircled Sayuri before turning into spikes which impaled all the Kirinin that flew towards her. The Uchiha then wielded the flames with a purple skeletal fist, transforming them into a large sword. She swept the floor with the flame control blade and instantly incinerated 24 shinobi. Sayuri's Susanoo evolved to its level 3 form as she slammed her hands together, then opened them. In between them was a black orb that shot into the sky. Sayuri shouted, "Chibaku Tensei!" The earth started shaking. Cracks appeared in the field before the ground suddenly erupted, sending chunks flying upwards towards the black orbs. What's happening?" screamed a shinobi in alarm. Those nearby started to gravitate towards the core as well, eventually trapping them in the huge ball of rock. The remaining 3,000 Kirinin were shaken, and rightfully so. Sayuri's Susanoo was now extremely tall, armored from tip to toe. Electricity converged in the left hand of the purple warrior in copious amounts, telekinetically commanding the Chibaku Tensei satellite to drop towards her. The Uchiha thrusted the Chidori towards it and announced, "Chidori? Hashikadaki? Chidori?" Planet splitter. Raitun chakra easily tore through the rocky sphere, producing a gigantic electric explosion that was visible even from space. The shattered pieces of the satellite began to fall towards the remaining shinobi. Sayuri grinned as she formed the seal of confrontation. Tengai Ryusei, Skyline Meteor. The smaller, but still significant pieces of rubble from the broken satellite began to pick up speed as they plunged, catching fire in the process. Many shinobi trembled in fear and dropped their weapons. A few laughed, a laugh of resignation that their fates were sealed. This is way out of our league," a Chunin remarked fearfully. The Jonin next to him nodded in agreement, watching helplessly as thousands of meteorites fell towards them. They bombarded the ground with the force of 50-tailed beast bombs, utterly obliterating the landscape and creating an explosion that could be felt across 2/3 the length of the elemental nations, in lands as far away as Suna. What was once a vast expanse was no more. Now, it was merely a wasteland of craters the size of 30 academy buildings. All that remained was the descending purple titan, which reduced in size till all that was left was a violet shroud of chakra around Sayuri. With her legendary dojutsu, the Uchiha surveyed the environment. Not a single blade of grass was present in the rubble, which consisted mainly of rocks littered with countless cadavers. Sayuri exhaled as her multicolored eyes faded into their usual black, bringing her protective envelope with it. Now, time to deal with Yagura, thought the Uchiha. A lightning-colored shroud surged around the girl, before she took off like a burst of wind. When she got to Mei and her subordinates, she saw a swirling distortion in the air just a second before it disappeared. The rebel leader was panting hard, a scowl painted on her face. Ao and Chijuro were exhibiting a similar behavior. Many rebel corpses were strewn across the grass which they fought on, while the remaining were clearly exhausted from fighting. Well, not like Sayuri didn't expect this. Yagura was a Kage after all. But that swirling distortion. It seems that I'm too late. What happened? The Uchiha questioned. The Terumi replied, We almost had him. We were about to kill Yagura when a man with an orange mask appeared and said, "He's mine," before seemingly absorbing him into his eye. Sayuri's fist tightened. A swirling distortion centered around the eye. If that wasn't Kamui, she had no other explanation. But that meant that it was an Uchiha, and she only knew of one other Uchiha roaming the elemental nations. Nisan. Yet, she remembered that night when her brother used Tsukuyomi on her. Kamui was an ability wielded by both eyes, so it was impossible for Itachi to have it unless he had the power of Indra like she did. Though she did not like it, her final conclusion made the most sense. That there was another Uchiha out there, one that no one knew. This was startling and distressing news, as her next questions were, who is he? How did he survive the clan massacre? Unfortunately, there was nothing that could answer her questions now. All she could deduce was that the unknown Uchiha had been there for Yagura's Biju, which likely meant that this man was from the Akatsuki, the very same organization her brother had joined. That gave her even more reason to seek out Itachi and eradicate him. For if she did not do it, her beloved would be the next target, and she would die before she let that happen. Her next priority would be to locate Akatsuki and find her sibling, as well as understand the mystery surrounding this relative of hers. Mei-san, although I'd very much like to stay for your inauguration, I have my own duties to attend to. Thank you for giving me this chance to test myself. Sayuri spoke up, though she realized the last line sounded eerily like her brother's last words to her. Mei smiled. We should be the ones thanking you. All right then, we shall not hold you back any further. I wish you Kami-sama's blessings in your endeavors. Once again, on behalf of my people, thank you very much. Sayuri replied as her form began to radiate a shroud of lightning. You're welcome. With that, she disappeared without a trace. With Naruto, these bastards will pay. The blonde swore as he rushed in the direction of Deidara and Sasori impatiently, with his team and an old lady from Tsunade following closely behind. The grandmother of Sasori responded, Child, I understand your urgency, but it would be wise to calm down before you engage the Akatsuki. My grandson is a master of trickery, and no doubt he already has something up his sleeve. Kakashi sighed, but it was understandable why his student felt this way. Gaara was a Jinchuriki just like Naruto, and the Uzumaki must have felt a personal bond with the Kazekage. To lose a friend to the same organization that would undoubtedly come for him was certainly infuriating. After losing his other friend, the Hatake was certain that Naruto did not intend to lose another person precious to him. The Uzumaki growled as he extended his sensory range. I found them. They're hiding in that rock formation. Half left, 300 meters away. Sakura's hand shifted to her kunai holster. As she drew closer to the cliff hideout, her anticipation for battle heightened. Suddenly, a sound like thunder rumbled in the distance, and for a few tense moments, the ground quivered just slightly and the nearby trees shook. Little did they know that it was the effect of their former teammates' technique on the opposite side of the elemental nations. What was that? Thought Sakura. Never mind that. Gaara is more important, Naruto said, startling the Haruno. I sense 5 seals in the vicinity. We should proceed with caution, warned Naruto as he detected 5 seals imbued with chakra around the rock formation. It was probably a barrier of some kind. Kakashi asked the Uzumaki to make a shadow clone which went ahead to scout. Boss, it's a Gofu Kekai, 5 seal barrier. The Kage Bunshin reported mentally. Summon 4 more clones to dismantle it. The original ordered. Hi, Sakura, could you do me a favor? Asked Naruto. Did you pick up super strength from Lady Tsunade? The tone in his voice and his respectful honorific told her that he was serious. Yes. At my signal. Could you blast a hole in the boulder right in front of us? She nodded, and took a deep breath as a visible blue aura began to emanate from her fist. Kakashi held his breath as he braced for the display of strength that was to come. Now! Naruto exclaimed as his clones ripped off the 5 pieces of parchment. Sakura sprinted forth, and after cocking back her fist, threw it with great force at the rock entrance. A powerful shockwave radiated outward from the point of impact and reduced the boulder into nothing more than fragments of rubble. Naruto rushed forward, not even stopping to admire the effects of Sakura's punch. Inside, There was a huge cavernous area with a large statue occupying much of the space. The statue had 9 eyes, of which only one was open. The Gedo Mazo, Naruto muttered. He had only heard of it, but never imagined the husk of the Jubi to be this menacing. More importantly, the motionless body of Gaara laid in front of the statue. Gaara! Naruto shouted in anguish. His chakra was practically gone, and Naruto could feel that his life force was absent. He heard a low chuckle and looked up. Somewhere on the statue, 2 figures were perched. One was a blonde with a ponytail, and an odd-looking device strapped atop his left eye. Further away, on the other side of the statue, was a considerably shorter creature. It didn't feel right to call him a human as his shape resembled a turtle with a cloak draped over him. Looks like the Kyuubi Jinchuriki decided to deliver himself to our doorstep, the shorter figure stated. Deidara smirked. You're too late, Uzumaki Naruto. The Kazekage is dead, and your next dash. Damari. Naruto spoke in an authoritative tone, startling his teammates. Sakura, look away. She didn't understand, but did as asked as she dared not question his now scary voice. Suddenly, a large tear ripped across Deidara's cloak and a long laceration appeared on his chest in a flash of orange. The Nukanin's eyes widened in shock and pain as his eyes finally caught up with the Uzumaki's speed and registered his blurred form right in front of him. Not a second later and Naruto had already fired a kick at his core, propelling the bomber to the other end of the cave. Naruto flicked the blood off his legendary blade before sheathing and sealing it. Sakura, you can look now, Naruto said before he jumped after Deidara, who had just removed himself from the small crater he had formed. The man blew a hole in the ceiling with one of his bombs and escaped atop his clay bird. Kakashi quickly ordered, "We'll let Naruto deal with Deidara while we take on Sasori." Sakura nodded and turned to face the short figure who was no doubt a puppet. With Naruto, the Uzumaki ascended to 6-path Sage mode in a fraction of a second and flew after the airborne Akatsuki member. "You're not getting away!" yelled Naruto. Deidara wanted so desperately to give HN, but knew that only a wrangled scream would emerge from his mouth due to the agony from the sword strike he had received. Instead, he opted to mold a destructive fleet of explosive birds. They left his hand and homed in on Naruto. The Uzumaki flicked his fingers, causing his Gododama to manifest as thin rods that intercepted each bird. With the clench of a fist, the rods expanded into miniature spheres that destroyed the clay avians. Deidara then launched multiple bombs of every size and shape towards Naruto from every direction, forcing the blonde to surround himself with a truth-seeking ball to shield himself from the bombardment. When the Kyuubi Jinchuriki removed the protection around him, the IWA Nuke-Nin had already disappeared from his line of sight. Though his eyes could not detect him, Naruto's sensory range proved far more useful in finding the missing man. The Nuke-Nin was behind him and approaching fast. Deidara should have known better than to attempt outmaneuvering the Konoha-Nin, especially since he could fly independently while the bomber was less nimble due to his reliance on his bird. Naruto dodged as the IWA Nuke-Nin flew past. The bomber flung an explosive straight at his face, but Naruto deactivated his Rikudo Senjutsu and plunged towards the forests below. A wooden pillar burst from the ground directly below Naruto, who flipped and landed on it. He jumped off it like a springboard while weaving a sequence of hand seals. Mokutan, Sashiki no Jutsu, with style, cutting Sprig's Jutsu. The Uzumaki intoned as he landed on the grassy floor. The pillar he was previously on turned into a machine gun. Its surface bristled with wooden spikes that launched themselves at the airborne Akatsuki member, and unbeknownst to him, was slowly guiding him into Naruto's line of fire by forcing him to evade them in a particular fashion. The Uzumaki's right arm glowed as orange chakra coalesced into a single point, before expanding into a giant Rasengan with 4 giant chakra blades protruding out of the center. This was a more powerful variation of his newest technique, the Rasen Shuriken, augmented with Asura's chakra which gave it its characteristic cadmium hue. The loud screeching sound finally caught Deidara's attention amidst trying to evade the wooden projectiles. What the dash? Senpo. Rasen Shuriken. Sage Art. Rasen Shuriken. Naruto yelled as he hurled the massive chakra Fuma Shuriken at the other blonde. It sliced through the air quickly and headed straight for the Nuke-Nin, who quickly swerved aside to avoid it. However, The Raisin Shuriken expanded rapidly at Naruto's command and detonated in midair, catching Deidara off guard and blowing him out of the sky. The man crashed onto the grass near Naruto, who closed the gap quickly and stabbed him with a kunai. HN? A voice from behind smirked. Katsu. The Deidara that was stabbed exploded, revealing it to be a clay clone and taking out the Uzumaki in the process. Naruto shattered into a million wooden splinters, prompting the Nuke Nin to realize that something was amiss. You seem to love explosions very much. Try this, the real Naruto shouted. He launched an explosive shadow clone at Deidara, who quickly slammed his hands onto the floor. Doton, Dorihiki, Earth Style, Mud Wall. From the ground, a large rampart rose to shield the Iwa Nin from the incoming ballistic missile. The ensuing blast rocked the wall harmlessly, merely causing a few fractures in the reinforced wall. The Uzumaki's hands then came together in the snake hand seal. Mokuton Hijitsu, Jukai Koten, with style secret jutsu, deep forest emergence. Almost immediately, the ground began to quake as hundreds of tree trunks sprouted from the forest floor. Branches grew from the main stems rapidly and expanded into humongous trunks from which more branches sprung. Some began to ensnare Deidara, who tried in vain to escape. Mokuton, Kazekage Korin, with style, deep forest bloom, Naruto muttered, causing pink flowers of tremendous size to bud. Their petals unfurled and released a haze of yellow pollen unto the Iwa Nuke Nin, who succumbed to the incapacitating agent. The Uzumaki's gaze hardened as he sent some airborne minute plant ovaries into Deidara's system for fertilization, allowing them to grow exponentially with some chakra. You will rue the day you killed my friend, Naruto said darkly within earshot of Deidara. As Naruto turned around and walked away, plants of titanic proportions burst out of Deidara's body, causing it to explode before the Nuke Nin could even fall unconscious. There was no time to scream as blood splattered against the trunks of the massive tree that germinated. The curse of hatred, thought Asura in Naruto's mindscape. Anija, I will not lose. With Kakashi, they had finally killed Sasori of the Red Sand. The rock formation they had previously been in had been devastated by his massive puppet army, as well as the third Kazekage's iron sand, and all that was left behind was debris and scattered machine parts. Even the Geto Mazo was gone. Kakashi extracted the corpse of the fifth Kazekage and set it on the floor just as Naruto arrived. Chiyo spoke, Don't fret, child. I am prepared to give my life to bring back Gaara-sama. Naruto's eyes widened, as did Kakashi and Sakura. How? The puppeteer knelt down next to the body of her late leader. I will transfer my life force to Lord Gaara. Please tell him that I entrust the legacy of Tsunade to him, and the world to you all, the next generation. Kisho Tensei, Reanimation Jutsu. Naruto nodded and observed with solemn silence as the old woman's hands glowed green. Without warning, Gaara's eyes flew open and the next moment, Chiyo collapsed. The redhead gasped. Jo Obaasama, Naruto, what are you doing here? The Uzumaki updated the Kage on the situation as he helped him up. Once he was done recounting, Gaara said, Thank you for your service, Konohanin. It is greatly appreciated. My village will now have to mourn the loss of a great elder. The blonde nodded in understanding. Stay safe, Gaara. You too. Land of Fire 2 days later. Two figures cloaked in black and red clouds were strolling casually along the border. One of them had just cashed in the bounty for a highly wanted target, and was gleefully counting the money he had earned. His partner had a bored expression on his face. In his right hand, he carried a giant red scythe, suggesting that he was ready for battle and in fact, was looking forward to a lot of bloodshed. Seriously, Kakuzu? Enough with the money already, the silver-haired man complained. Shut up, we're both entitled to what we want. I enjoy the money, you enjoy the killing. Plus, we're being followed, so you might as well get some action. The other man replied as he kept his money. Ha! Haydn turned around, for he did not notice the presence earlier, which was honestly quite stupid, since the person was right behind and barely bothered to hide her presence. Who the heck are you? The black-haired girl pulled off her cloak and tossed it aside as her left hand ripped her sword out of its scabbard. My name is Uchiha Sayuri, and you two will be answering some questions.